Hi, it's Dr. Kurt Woeller. Now that we're into spring, particularly in the spring months, we start to see some kids have regression problems. And let me explain why I think this is happening. No matter where you live in the country or anywhere in the world, when you start going through a cycle of passing from winter into spring, obviously we're getting a bloom of foliage and flowers and whatnot, and we're starting to get an increase in pollen levels into the air. Now here in Southern California, where I live, we many times will go through a quick onset of spring where things start to fully bloom within a 2 to 3 week period of time, and the pollen counts go very high. Now some kids on the autism spectrum have a great sensitivity to pollens and allergens, and when they do so they can have problems: itchy eyes, runny nose, cough, whatever it may be. But I've seen some kids regress because of this, and many times they regress because they have an increase in yeast in their body. Now, how does that work? What I've typically seen kids do many times is when spring comes about, is they get an increase in yeast, so their behaviors start to turn: inappropriate laughter, goofiness, giddiness, silliness, high self-stimulatory behavior, high sensory needs. Seeing kids do all kinds of odd behavior with the onset of spring, usually induced by a yeast issue secondary to allergy. Now, I think what's happening is that as the immune system is keeping check of an underlying yeast problem and our body is being exposed to allergens, there's a shift in the immune function where it starts trying to deal with the allergens, and essentially it leaves somewhat the yeast unopposed, and the yeast start to thrive in this particular situation. Now, whether that's the exact mechanism or that's happening or not, it's difficult to say, but it's a pattern that I've seen over and over and over again. So if you have a child who tends to regress with seasonal changes, particularly winter to spring, or if you get high pollen counts in the summer or whatnot and you see a problem, then there's some underlying allergy problem. You can do either types of allergy test to help with that, blood testing for IgE allergies, or we're using some type of over-the-counter allergy medication like non-drowsy producing Claritin, whatever it may be. That may help, but also recognize that you may be also unmasking an underlying yeast problem with your child, and that's where certain testing can be helpful. One of the tests that I'll do is something called an organic acid test, which looks at yeast markers and gives me an indication of how prevalent or what kind of a problem we have with yeast in that particular child. So look for regression seasonally, and these changes behaviorally. Many times it can be an underlying factor of a yeast problem that's being unveiled, if you will, because of allergens. Thanks.